1. This was back in 2013 when I was based in Holland, British Marine for context. I had been married to my wife for a little over 18 months when I deployed to Afghanistan. My wife had a job in the British delegation on base and got to know pretty much every Brit and their husband or wife. One day, we were directly targeted by a vehicle-borne IED. Now, whilst it wasn't uncommon for there to be a threat to coalition forces in general, being directly targeted felt more personal for obvious reasons. That was also the day I found out about an RAF guy back in Holland had tried it on with my wife. I found him on Facebook and, still feeling rather raw about Terry trying to blow me up, messaged him words to the effect of, "If you go near Mrs. von Scranhammer again, I will put glass in your throat the next time I see you." The next day, one of my bosses, who was also RAF, messaged me on Facebook to say that this guy had been over to his office and basically tattled on me. He gave me a friendly warning and heads up that this guy could have gone to the MPs and reported me. I have no idea what would have happened, but I acknowledged the warning and said it won't happen again. My boss had my back and actually told him to wind his neck. Fast forward to when I got back from Afghan. A few days had passed and I was starting to settle into a normal life again. My wife brought it up after explaining she didn't mention it at the time due to my reaction the first time, that an Army Sergeant Major had tried to message her via Facebook. He told her she was beautiful and wanted her number. She promptly blocked him. I was pissed off to say the least, but I understand why she kept it until I was back on home soil. The next day, I went into our department and spoke to my other boss, an army captain. I told him what had happened and he said, "Leave it with me." He basically had a chat with him and nothing came of it. I felt deflated and even more pissed off. That was until our senior military officer came into our department. He welcomed me back and asked how my tour was. Still pissed off, I said it was good, sir, with the exception of Sergeant Major Douchebag trying to get round my wife. He was understandably a little taken aback. About an hour or so later, he emailed me saying he feels the need to do something official about this. Something I had forgotten was that the colonel and sergeant major belonged to the same regiment, so having one of his own behave like this had clearly gripped him. I told him the full story and provided screenshots of what Sergeant Major Douchebag had said to Mrs. von Scranhammer. For this to go official, my wife had to provide a statement. Unfortunately, Mrs. von Scranhammer is very non-confrontational, and she didn't want this to continue. I respected her wishes of not wanting to provide a statement, but hatched a plan that would be 3 years in the making. The timing is important. I emailed the colonel and said that Mrs. von Scranhammer has declined. However, I felt the need for some formal recognition, so I asked that Sergeant Major Douchebag write a letter of apology, addressed to both my wife and I, which is to be signed and dated. This was granted, and I received said letter 2 days later. It said, "Lance Corporal and Mrs. von Scranhammer, I am writing this letter to both to apologize for the torment and anxiety that you must both have felt from the messages that you received from my Facebook account. To Mrs. von Scranhammer, nobody should ever be put in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door, especially so when they have the added stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this, I apologize. To Lance Corporal von Scranhammer, being operationally deployed is stressful enough without the added stress and worry about family back home. Support from home and loved ones is what carries many people through tough times whilst on tour. For any undue angst caused, I apologize. I regret any hurt and anguish caused by this issue and apologize wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, Sergeant Major Douchebag." And I waited. I saw out the rest of my time in Holland, moved back to the UK to my new base, and waited some more. Almost 3 years after I received the apology letter, I looked up Sergeant Major Douchebag's wife on Facebook. I had known the whole time we were out there that he was married. His wife lived back in the UK, and he has routinely tried to cheat on her. I sent her the same screenshot which I had sent to the Colonel. I also, before leaving Holland, printed off the emails between the Colonel and myself where I requested the apology letter. I blanked out the Colonel's details and sent the pictures of that. And then, lastly, I sent a picture of the apology letter signed and dated by her husband, admitting what he had done. Once I saw she had read it, I blocked her, blocked Sergeant Major Douchebag and all his friends who had also been out in Holland at the same time. Why 3 years? I remember him saying before he turned into a douchebag and tried it on with my wife that he only had 3 years left to serve. If my timing was correct, he was months away from completing his 22 years and receiving a very nice pension. If his wife decided to go ahead and divorce, she would take half of said pension, which would essentially fuck him over for the rest of his life. 2. Years ago, when my wife and I had purchased a home, the builder had told us it might be part of a homeowners association, depending on how many homes they ultimately constructed. We were among the first 5 buyers, so we pretty much had free rein to change what we wanted via permissions from the builders, that those changes would be added to what was turned over to the homeowners association, and for as long as we lived there, the changes could stay. The one change we did was add a motion security light on the back of our fence, because my neighbor's kid would smoke weed there and I didn't want to smell it sitting on my patio, or when I had the windows open on nice evenings. Well, that went up my neighbor's ass sideways, for whatever reason, and she refused to believe her kid would be doing that, even though it didn't point towards any other home, just the grass between my fence and the woods. It kept the kids from smoking weed there without calling the cops on something so foolish and petty. But since it was cleared from the builder, she couldn't do anything. Well, 6 months later, we end out with a homeowners association, and she makes it priority 1 to get the lights. Several other neighbors followed what I did, whose homes faced the wooded area, removed. The requirement to get it changed, since they were builder approved, was 80% of the community. So the only votes to keep came from those of us on the back property, so we have to remove them being permanent changes. Not even 3 days later, her kid is again back there smoking weed. The HOA counter to why I had it was to call the police non-emergency number. But that's absolutely stupid to risk fucking up some kid's life because he wanted to smoke weed, when that's an issue his parents, who remember, don't believe he does it, deal with. So now I'm pretty livid. This North American land whale cry to the point I had to remove a cheap and non-disruptive fix. She refused to be a parent and keep her kid from impeding on us. So it's time for me to be petty. The next day after her kid first went back there, I go out and buy a 12-foot section of 4x4 wire, concrete, a large planter, and 3 6,000 lumen floodlights, and build essentially a mini portable stadium light setup, rigged to the motion sensors, so whenever anyone passed by my fence, instead of being a small area immediately behind my house lit up, the sun came out to the woods with one light giving her home an X-ray. The first time her kid went back there, it was glorious. I got a picture of him with his bong in hand before he skirted off, so I could show her proof. And it sent her through the roof, getting those free X-rays. I showed her the picture and she still didn't care, saying if it goes off again, I'll call the police, and I was fine with it, because I told her they'd see the same picture I'd just shown her. In reality, they wouldn't, but Martha the Manatee didn't know that, and I didn't expect her to try and call my bluff, which she never did. Just complained to the HOA, a lot. In the morning time, I'd lay the contraption down so it couldn't be seen, and raise it up after it got dark. About a week after this, I get a summons to the HOA meeting that's happening that week, and since it was disciplinary for my contraption, their lawyer was there, and they want to hear the case. So I lay everything out, from builder to pictures, showing how the original light didn't shine any brighter than the one on her porch, and couldn't be seen from inside the homes. Her vendetta to change the HOA rules to suit what she wanted, 3 of the 5 other neighbors who had to remove their security lights were also there to argue for getting them back when I went. After about 40 minutes, the lawyer comes back and pretty much said, "Well, Mr. and Mrs. Jefe Brutus, you are right. This isn't a permanent structure, so it technically is allowed. But you can't have a light facing her property any longer. In addition, by the 1st of next month, you will all be allowed to reinstall your smaller lights, as they did provide a measure of security that benefits the property as a whole." So Martha the Manatee was blessed another week of sun on pole, and being mad about it. Those of us who lived facing the woods got our lights back, and after reselling the lights, I made most of my money back I spent on supplies making that monstrosity. It was absolutely worth spending the few $100s to out-petty a bad parent and insufferable neighbor. 3. My English teacher for 2nd and 3rd year of secondary school, between 14 and 15 years old, was an asshole. We frequently were given essays to do for homework. A common piece of feedback he gave a good few of us in the class on these essays was, "Baby talk, boy," followed by him throwing your hardcover essay book in your general direction. Most of the time the student caught it, sometimes they'd have to get up to pick the book up from wherever it landed. The odd time someone got hit in the face. I could never make sense of what baby talk boy meant. English was never my favorite subject. I don't like poetry. I found the plays and books we read to be boring. I didn't start reading for myself for fun until I was maybe 16 or 17. So I'm not saying these essays I wrote were works of art, but I thought I deserved more feedback than baby talk boy. So one time, after dozens of these comments about my homework, I put in a real effort on my essay, got out the thesaurus. Nobody in that essay said anything. They whispered, shouted, exclaimed. Every noun had an adjective, every verb an adverb. I thought that's what was wanted. The essay is handed over. A few days later is the usual comment time in front of the class. The teacher sat on a free desk with his feet on a chair and a large pile of frisbees, as he usually did, ready to practice his throwing skills. He eventually gets around to my essay. Baby talk, boy. I got a sprained finger catching the book that day. I wasn't expecting the exact same comment again, and was slow to react to the throw. I didn't say anything and put my essay book away. Feeling about shorty about the whole thing, got angry afterwards, and realized that this guy was just a fucking asshole. At this point, we were coming towards the end of 3rd year. We have a state exam in Ireland at that stage, and homework is generally not given anymore, so students can focus more on their exam prep. But as I said, this teacher was an asshole. We get another essay for homework. I wrote the most passive-aggressive attack of his teaching that I could come up with. Paragraphs about what the comment baby talk boy could mean. Why does a grown man think it's appropriate to call us boy? Does he think he's cool, sitting on a desk like a substitute teacher from a movie? Is he above just handing us our books back, rather than throwing them at us? I enjoyed writing that. The next essay handback and comment day comes around. He stands at his desk at the front of the class. He calls people out by name to walk to his desk. He comments on their essays as they walk up. Not one baby talk boy comment. My name is eventually called. I don't get a comment. He hands back my book, and I walk to my desk with the dumbest smile on my face. 4. I am a truck driver, and to say this time of the year is stressful is an understatement. Between tight deadlines and loads, customers realizing they need something last minute before the holiday, and added traffic all over the country, it's a nightmare. Yesterday, I went to a customer to pick up a load heading to Iowa, so I could drop it for another driver to get home, then grab my load back east so I could get home. I walk onto the dock, and the shipping clerk is sitting in the office with her back to me browsing Fingerhut. And 2 other people in the office made direct eye contact with me, but didn't indicate to the clerk I was there. I tried unsuccessfully getting her attention, but she flat out refused to acknowledge my existence. At this point, I realize it's almost noon and they're trying to blow me off and leave me until after lunch. I had been up since 3:30 a.m. and was having none of it. I had a long way to go and a short time to get there. So I whip out my phone and look at the app we use to send and receive load info. Usually, along with the customer's address and pickup numbers, is a phone number for them. I figure I'll just call the shipping office and get their attention that way. Phone starts to ring on my end, but instead of the shipping office, I get the company director. The first listing on the directory is the plant manager. Now, if my time in the army has taught me anything, you get best results by jumping the chain of command. So I hit the number for the plant manager and put my phone on speaker. As soon as Fingerhut Fran hears the voicemail for the plant manager, she turns around and starts shrieking. I calmly raise my finger in the "just 1 minute" sign and proceed to leave a voicemail on the plant manager's line explaining who I was, who I drove for, what load I was supposed to pick up, and finished off by adding that his shipping office personnel were present, but too busy online shopping to acknowledge my existence. I thanked him, left my number, and hung up. By now everyone in the office were staring slack-jawed at me. Fingerhut Fran was beet red and fuming. The other person in the office just tells me to back into a door and they'll get to me soon. I figure at that point my day is shot and they'll leave me in the dock as long as possible to retaliate. To my surprise, they started on me immediately and had me loaded in less than 20 minutes. When I went to get my paperwork, the plant manager was there having a discussion with Fran, while the other person apologized and told me to have a happy holiday. I get it. Everyone wants this week to be over so they can spend time with their families, but so do I. And that won't happen if you ignore me instead of doing your job. 5. At my previous job, I worked on the business support desk. One of the products we offered was a SIM and data management service. Basically, you would buy a block of data, say 100 gigabytes per month, and however many SIM cards you needed. Then you can assign data to SIM cards as needed via the customer portal. We weren't an actual cellular network provider, we just sold data and SIMs on their network. We would often receive tickets regarding SIM cards not working. 90% of the time it was a configuration issue. You need to use the correct APN to connect. Other issues were signal problems and faulty devices, not the SIM cards themselves. They don't just suddenly become faulty, bar the odd one from the factory. On this particular day, I received an urgent ticket first thing in the morning about a SIM that was offline and not reachable. The tech who logged in was very insistent that this was an urgent issue and wanted constant updates. I checked from our portal and could see that the SIM still had data assigned, so it was not a simple issue of running out of the assigned data. Our first response in this sort of situation is to have the user check the physical SIM, take it out and reinsert it, and confirm that the correct APN was in use. Our terms and conditions firmly state that this is the user's responsibility, as the SIM could be anywhere in the country. Not long after asking the above, the tech responds that the checks have been done, and asking for an ETA on resolution. At this point, I was pretty sure that they were lying and had not checked anything. I get a sixth sense about these things, but had no proof. At this point, our next option is to have the cellular network provider check the SIM, which takes at least a few hours. With the tech continuing to hound me, I ended up escalating the call with the provider to confirm that there were no issues in the area and that the SIM was offline. By now it was mid-afternoon and I was getting very annoyed with how the tech kept asking for escalations and ETAs, when I knew they were lying about performing the requested checks from their side. If they had done the checks, this would mean that the SIM card just failed after working for months. That just doesn't happen. I decided that it was time to comply with the tech's request to expedite the issue. I drafted an email confirming 1. The tech had performed the requested checks, 2. The cellular network could not find any issues, 3. The SIM had sufficient data available. 4. The next step was a SIM swap, which I would ensure was done immediately. As soon as the email was sent, I called the individual responsible for SIM swaps, and by the end of the call, the swap was complete. For those that don't know, the SIM swap is irreversible and renders the old SIM completely unusable. Shortly after, the text manager got involved and asked us to postpone the SIM swap, as they wanted to check the device on site, confirming my suspicion that this was never done. I replied that the tech had informed us that all on-site checks were done already, and that the SIM swap was expedited due to his insistence. Turns out that the SIM was in some networking equipment in a mine in a remote province of the country. The tech's company now had to send someone to our office to pick up the new SIM, then drive all the way to a remote mine to replace it, potentially a 2-day job. I'm not sure if the tech received any disciplinary action, but he never asked to escalate a SIM issue ever again. There was no fallout for us, as we were covered by the terms and conditions. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 111. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, hell, even if you didn't, share it about to all your friends and family. Especially that cousin you never talked to. If you didn't enjoy it, this would be just the thing to piss them off. And if you did enjoy it and you haven't spoken to that cousin for a while, maybe this would help rekindle things, you know, it's pretty good stuff. Anyway, right, this will go up on Thursday, the 30th, okay. Do I have anything planned for Thursday? I think we're all good. No birthday shout-outs till next year. Yep, we're all good on that. Okay, just making sure I don't miss anything. I will need to do some grocery shopping soon, so I should probably take care of that. Make sure I've got all my supplies for New Year's Day. Then tomorrow night, I'll likely nip round to see family for an hour or so. I usually seeing the bells, as we call it in Scotland. It's when those they kind of ding the dongs and televised. I wonder how they'll handle that this year. I think there was a televised thing last year as well. I can't quite recall, but I guess we'll see, depending on what restrictions might be. This is they tend to dust off the same presenters and the musicians for these things every year. So we'll see that, and then I'll probably pop home and eat. Most likely, that tends to be what I do. I'll go to see family, have a little drink, non-alcohol, usually lemonade or something. Then I come home and have something to eat and just chill for the rest of the night. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.